Okay, looks like we're getting on here. Hope y'all are doing well. Folks are still coming around, and we're going to let them load. I know folks are still leaving the stadium, so we'll let them clear for a minute. But again, if you're new here, we are live right now. And while we're live, hit the question marks at the beginning of your question as we get into it. Later on the replay, you can just ask them like normal. I'm going to check this light here real quick, and we'll get rolling. Let me know what you think. Who was the player of the game? All right. A lot of familiar names in here. Let me get this out of the shot directly. Hopefully this is streaming better for you guys tonight than it did last night. I think I fixed a couple of things around the house, so maybe that helps. Kelce, Mahomes, Ware, Damian, a lot of good things. We're going to talk about all of them as we go through. I'm going to start with my notes off the top, and we'll go from there. We'll get to the questions and all that as we go along. I know there's still a lot of folks coming out of the stadium, all that, so just bear with them. If you all jump in, just keep asking your questions. I will get to them. So first off the top, I thought, again, another kind of slowish start, and it kind of set the tone for this game. I thought what you saw out of the Ravens early was a very sound, aggressive plan to defend these Chiefs. And you saw, in particular, I thought Weddle's play stood out in terms of directing that backfield. And not to talk about the Ravens, off the top of the show, but it's very important because that's the same kind of thing that you're going to get from Eric Berry when he returns in terms of straightening out all that coverage type stuff. And that's going to be important. Before I go any further, I want to give a shout out to my wife, a Broncos fan, who actually was hooping and hollering the whole game, definitely cheering for the Chiefs down the stretch. So thanks to her, Brookie. I appreciate that. And honestly, she was a lot louder than me. Big takeaway for me is that, again, this team persevered. Not a good day out. A lot of little issues. Thank you, Brookie. I love you too. Everybody say hi to the wife. But they persevered and they pushed through it. Defense gave up 198 yards by my count. I don't have the official stat sheet yet. Looks like the NFL is still working on it, but that's a lot of yards to give up. And there were some serious drives that really cost them against the run. A lot of slowing down, a lot of Bob being stubborn. I know we want to talk about Bob. I know a lot of you want to talk about Bob. Golden Pay Dirt, thank you. I cheers to you. I'm drinking Ecliptic's Imperial Brewed IPA today. And I swear it's only my second beer. They tied, I'd probably be 4 in by now. So, Pater, thank you. Bob's going to be an interesting story. And yeah, I know a lot of you feel Bob needs to go. I tend to lean that way myself. But especially in the early going, he showed a couple of looks in the base defense, 3 linemen, that he backed out and went back to his old ways, 4-man front. And that one drive, I want to say it was the last of the first quarter where they drove on him consistently. That was the result. And we talked about it going in. They came back out after halftime. I think my notes said it was, second drive, where they actually came out, went to the base, 3 linemen, covered those guards and the center. And amazingly, they were able to slow down the run again. Now, there were a couple of plays where the secondary fell asleep and allowed some of those passes that shouldn't have been completed. Hey, Pat Denton, thank you for your contribution. I appreciate that. I'm glad you like the show. And, for those of you who don't, if you got something you want to see, just let me know what it is. I'm here to try and give you as much information as I can. Yusura, you too. Thank you. Did Tyreek put Barry on notice playing through excruciating ankle pain? I'm not going to say that. It's a different injury. I don't think anybody ever really questions Eric Berry's resolve or his pain tolerance or his leadership skills. I think it's a more significant injury. Quite honestly, my guess is that, especially at the end of the game, I didn't see Tyreek limping much at all. So I'm guessing there was a cortisone something involved that does help dull that pain. So especially if you don't feel it's structural, you can play through it. Much like you saw with Spencer Ware. John Moser, thank you for yours. I appreciate that. Y'all are buying me beers left and right. As long as it's slow, that's a good thing. Too many beers and I'll say things you don't really want to hear, but uh Ware was another one that played through pain, and I don't think it's anything comparable to Eric Berry's. That's just it's a more significant injury. I think Tyreek showed that he's gutsier than a lot of people give him credit for being a smaller guy, and that's important. Underrated is a lot of what went on in this game, including Tyreek Hill. Scott Kreider, thank you. Don't fill her head too much. She gets a kick out of listening to me shout at the television, so you guys must too. Anyway, thank you, Shorty. Appreciate that. But again, I tweeted near halftime that I thought Spencer had an AC injury. That's the joint here going into the shoulder, clavicle into the shoulder, right? And there's a lot of ligaments in there, and you can get a strain that you can play through, and that's about pain management. It's not anything serious. That appears to be what it was. You could also have a tear, and that loosens the stability of the joint, and then you really end up not playing, and it takes some time to recover from. And the fact that he went out late, I'll be looking for an update to see what's going on with Spencer Ware. He may have re-injured it or further injured it later in the game. I think that he continued. Bubba Bug, thank you. And I agree with you. I think Barry is playing Thursday night. I think I told you guys a couple weeks ago when he started practicing, that Chargers game's got to be his target. They can really use him against that particular team, seal up the division, make no questions about it. And I agree with you. I think that's what they're holding him for, and I think he will play Thursday night. But that AC joint is something we'll have to follow up for. A number of you guys have already mentioned it, and I want to make sure that I cover that too. I thought Damian Williams looked really good, not only catching the ball like we know he can, but he had a couple of carries that were really nice, squeezing into small places, getting extra yards. Like, it's a really stout defensive front. And a guy that really came through beyond the expectation, really, I thought. And furthermore, and I know a couple of you saw it because I've been waiting for it all day. I thought when Spencer initially got hurt that you'd see it. So I want to see more Darrell Williams. I actually, on that play that he was in the shotgun, they motioned Tyreek out. I thought he was open there over the middle, and it might have been something they could have gone to. But the fact that, yes, he's third on the depth chart, but they played through that game. And even though it's overtime, the game's on the line, they were not afraid to put him in there, obviously. But that does tell me, again, that Spencer may have re-aggravated something or further injured himself. We'll have to look at that. I'm excited to see what Darrell can do. Hopefully not in that kind of pressure situation, but we'll see. You know, I have faith what we saw in the preseason is something he's been able to build on in practice. And I really loved his potential coming out. Maybe I'm guilty of looking a little bit too much at his college tape and projecting, but you know, that's part of the game as well. So that said, I think what you saw is that Bob switched over and gave you some of that base front so they could stop the run. And you saw that force the Baltimore Ravens into what they're not that good at. Yes, Jackson can scramble. They have designed runs for him as well. Obviously, he's an athlete. I was actually impressed with the way he threw the ball today. He was better than I expected. So give him credit for that. That last play, we'll talk about that later with Justin Houston, but I don't know that you can put that on him. I thought actually he played pretty well. And, you know, in terms of like fantasy and that kind of thing, I think he's somebody to look for going forward, especially if you're in a dynasty league or a keeper league like I am. All my leagues are keeper leagues. That's the closest thing to trying to be a real GM and understand the game from a long-term standpoint, right? So trying to make sure that I get all this. Oh, we got to talk about the quarterback. The interception Pat Mahomes threw was ugly, right? It looked like he was panicked. He was under pressure. He was under pressure all day. That defensive front from Baltimore is no joke. But I thought that he let something get away from him there. Hopefully that he can calm down. He still looks like he's throwing off his back foot too much, even though he's got that cannon. As his Twitter avatar, Captain Mahomes or whatever, likes to point out, he does have that cannon, but he relies on it a little bit too much sometimes. And I'm pleasantly surprised that he hasn't been throwing those over the middle picks like he did in college to linebackers he never saw, but he is coming up short on a couple of things. Nathan Burns, thank you for your contribution. I hope I'm hitting topics that you're liking. Furthermore, I think that's just indicative of him falling back on his athleticism. I think that's okay. He's got to keep learning from it. And I think he did. I thought he settled down the second half. I thought Mahomes showed that when he has to make adjustments, he can. There was that one intentional grounding, and that fine. I don't care about that. It was still a smarter play than trying to force it somewhere else. So that's going to be the big key. But more important than that is that there was especially, and I tweeted out the time. I didn't actually record when it was down, but it was Baltimore. They're up in his face. Everybody was at the line. They were in a cover zero. They had no safety back, and it was basically man on man. He had Conley out one side, and I think it was Robinson on the other. And that's a position where it was 3rd and 8, and Andy called a run option for some reason. And that's if you feel like you can get players to overcommit and that they're not going to be everyone up at the line, because getting out of the line on that option is a little bit difficult. So I don't think the play call was great. But more important, for Mahomes, when we come to the playoffs, when we come to defenses that understand that they can throw him for a couple of loops, do some things to disguise him, he's got to get better at changing that play, at recognizing, oh, there's too much here. He's got to move out of that, especially against a cover zero. You change over to all slants, and you have a first down there. I think it was 8 yards, right? Easily convertible. And it's, basically a step a hitch and the ball's out. And that's what had to happen. That was the one thing that I was a little disconcerted about, is that didn't see Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes change up to the quicker deliveries. Didn't adjust their game enough, I thought. And it doesn't have to stay adjusted. You have to, when you do that and you start running those quick patterns, you get the ball out a lot faster. It backs the defense off and it allows you to do what you want to do in the first place. A little bit of give and take there would have been better. But it is how it goes. Andy is who Andy is. I will say this. I don't have the total numbers, but my first half impression, they ran 34% of the play call. And I feel like Andy stuck to that later in the game, but I could be wrong. I'll have to look at the finals. But just looking at the game sheet here, I don't have the game sheet. I'm just looking at the stats on the NFL's page. And between Damian and Spencer, 23 carries, right? But compared to Patrick with 53 pass attempts, still a little heavy. I would like to see a little bit more run, but Andy didn't abandon it like I thought he might. So that's a positive sign. I want to see more of that. I think having that conglomeration at running back is going to help that, especially when they signed Sharkandrick and didn't even make him active. So that tells you that they feel like they have enough in the backfield that they can continue to use it. So John Jones, hey, I just answered your question. Didn't even realize that. Folks, these questions are going by so far today. There's 400 people in here. Thank you all for coming by. I appreciate it. But unfortunately, I haven't seen a whole lot of questions, so that means there must have been a lot that went by. So let me finish up my thoughts, and then we'll open for questions here in a couple minutes, and actually, hopefully I can read them all. I talked about Mahomes trying to kill that play. Again, a little bit more recognition. They were throwing some things at him, and we have to not get caught up in how good he's played, but remember that he is still, for all intents and purposes, a rookie in terms of his first year starting. And that's something that's going to come along. He's going to learn from it. We've seen all year long that he is a guy that will learn from his mistakes, and that really, really helps. It's going to be important. I think he'll get there, but he's going to see more complexity as the playoffs draw close. And yes, he's seen most of the teams that he's going to go against, except for the Texans, who are still they lost today too. So, but the Patriots, Steelers, he's seen them, but they hasn't seen the complexity that they can bring or how they will adjust their defense now that they've played him once. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going to pause it right here because there's a ton of questions, and I'll try to get up there. Just want to say hi to everybody who's been here. SSA's back. Aaron's back. Nice to see you guys. The O-line, I thought, had some issues for Irving going out. I think you saw that Irving's more athletic than he really appears most of the time, because Jeff Allen struggled sometimes, especially on the inside rushes, because Jeff's just not as quick. Just a little heavier. I liked what he brought in the run game. I think Jeff's great for that. But you see how it's not quite as well oiled in the pass game without Irving in there. So I think that gives you an idea. A lot of folks have been down on Cam Irving this year, and he's definitely got a way to go in terms of his strength, but what he brings to the pass game is important. We talked about the wear injury. Tyreek. Let's talk about Tyreek for a minute, because I was really impressed with what we saw from him. He is a guy that is slight to begin with. He makes his money not getting hit, and that's on purpose. I think he moving forward and getting pushed through and being able to be there. I mean, that last drive was 90% him. That really shows you how dedicated he is to this team and to his particular quarterback. I think that's a lot of it. That relationship's important, but it gives you a good feeling going, hey, John Jones, thanks. I appreciate that. Sorry, I kind of hit your question before you actually asked it, but somebody said something about this. Sorry about that, folks. A little hiccup in the stream here. But Tyreek, want to see how significant that injury is, but him powering through really shows you his dedication. And I know there was a lot of discussion about the whole Hunt thing versus him, but I think that shows you just how team-oriented Tyreek Hill is. So, Dan Thompson, I'm gonna highlight your comment or question right now, and I'll come back to it in just a second. I think that highlights how dedicated Tyreek Hill is that maybe Kareem Hunt wasn't. And I think that is about the team, and that's important. I think it's going to be a key going forward, because if you get guys that will put out like that when they're hurt for this quarterback and this team, there's a long way they can go. This is the first time that they've been hit in the mouth like this. Yes, the Patriots ran them down and defended them well, but they didn't hit them like this. Yes, they've lost 2 games this year in shootouts. And Pat got rattled a little bit by Aaron Donald, but not a whole lot else out of that game. But he got hit today and took that and stood back up. And this whole team had to stand up and take that physicality and put it back on him. And I thought that was a really good sign. That's going to be important come postseason. When the weather gets colder, when teams are better, you got to punch through things like that. Last point that I want to make, I thought the secondary played better in the end. I thought they felt the fury. Definitely Bob sending some pressure was key. I think Fuller made a big play. He might have held a little bit. I'm not going to call it PI, because clearly there were other calls in that game that were the same level of contact that weren't called. So I wasn't going to go there. Now, this was the Rams game. Every single one of those plays would have been called. There would have been 17 PI flags today. That shows you the difference in which refs call what and how tight a game can be just on the way that those refs decide to call a game. But this was a little looser. I thought you saw the defense in the second half play looser and play more aggressive. I thought Hitchens stepped up a little bit. You saw him when he was running free, when he was decisive and understood where he was supposed to go and he could just go. You saw him play like the guy you saw in Dallas. And that does bring me back to the Bob aspect of what's going on. Justin Houston is continually counted out over and over. People say he's too old, he's too slow. Aaron Hahn, thank you. I appreciate the contribution. If you have a question, Aaron, hit that back too, because I'm going to answer Dan's in a minute. Justin Houston being underrated is a serious mistake. That particular play, there was an O-line fumble there that they didn't block him well. I don't know if anybody touched him at all, but just discounting Justin Houston because of D Ford and Chris Jones, that's a serious mistake. And he showed you what he can do. He came up big in another play. Justin Houston may not be as explosive as he used to be. He's still a formidable defender in this league, and he's going to be so long as he doesn't get hurt again. So just remember that going forward as we all continue to talk about totals with sacks with Chris Jones and D Ford. Sorensen has no business playing a deep safety. I'm going to leave it at that, or I'm going to get on a rant, and we want to stay positive for the most part on this show. So that said, I would have liked Scandrick to come up with that interception again, but for a guy for falling down on the play and getting back in position, I felt that was a nice play. I'm not going to give him too much crap about it. And so that brings me back to Dan Thompson's question. Dan, thank you for adding it. And the way that it goes is Dan asked, are you still for Rex Ryan? I still am. I would be for Todd Bowles in a pinch. I would be for, I don't think McDermott's going to leave Buffalo, but if they tank down the stretch, maybe that happens. I'd be for McDermott too. I think what Bob showed you is he understands how to be aggressive. He understands when he needs to turn his players loose and how they can play. He's just too stubborn to do it. I think it's problematic. I think it's Bob. I think it comes from him. I think it affects the play of everybody. I don't feel like Ragland is 100% healthy. I will say that. So that's important. You can't put that on Bob, but I feel like Hitchens' play has been more hurt by Bob than it has been by Hitchens himself and his injury. So if there's an offseason change, I think it's probably for the good. I feel like if you're more aggressive with this particular talent that you have on this team, and that will change in the offseason as well, but if you were more aggressive with this particular talent, I think this defense would be more productive. I think it would be better against the run, and I feel like it would be probably still giving up a lot of pass yards, but I feel like balls would be contested more. There'd be more pressure. Pressure is the key to everything. And that's what it comes down to in this league. And they showed you that today. This offense wasn't slowed down by the Rams, even though they had the best player in the NFL on defense. They weren't slowed down by the Patriots, even though they play a really sound scheme. This team was slowed down because the Baltimore Ravens beat the crap out of them on the offensive line. They sent more than they could block, and they got to Pat Mahomes. So an aggressive defense is what I'm for. If it's Rex Ryan, great. If it's Sean McDermott, great. But yeah, I won't shy away from Rex. I think you all know that. Does Sammy come back on Thursday? No, I think Sammy's shut down to the playoffs from everything that I've heard. How about that no-look pass? Yeah, it's incredible. He does a heck of a job. I don't know how he does it. And it was a tight spiral too. So Pat Mahomes is a force of nature as far as I can tell. Beat the best defense in the NFL, and Sutton needs to go. Daniel Summers, I hear what you're saying. I don't know that Andy does, but I do. So I wish I could give you guys a definite answer, but I don't get to do that. It's just one of those things I'm going to roll the punches to. I want a coffee mug like yours. Where can I get one? It's in the show notes. They've updated it. It's an NFL product. It's available on Amazon, and it's in the show notes of each video, and it might not be on the podcast, but it's there. And I'm actually going to have some RGR stuff coming soon, some shirts, hats, and definitely going to do a mug. If I can get somebody to do it in yellow, I will. Otherwise, we'll go with the red or the white or whatever. But we'll have some RGR merch for you guys, hopefully coming soon before Christmas. Questions. Do you think the Chiefs need a new kicker? I think he's having a little bit of trouble. I'm not ready to say that they need a new kicker. D formation, should they pull Parker and only play with 10? You put Parker in the back, and I think I'm okay with it. You try to get him to tackle up at the line of scrimmage in the first 10 yards. I think that's where it's problematic. I'd rather have seen Parker and Sorensen switch today. Hey, Brian McGee, thank you for your contribution. And thanks for listening to the podcast, too. This was the craziest game ever. In fact, I heard from Matt Williamson. I'm going to be on Locked On NFL tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that podcast as well. Yeah, I'm sure Matt will have some things to say. He's not exactly a believer in anybody but Mahomes on this team, so I'll be interested to hear what he has to say. Spencer, yes, I'll be interested to see what happens. I don't know any update more than you guys do. Matt Derrick's in the locker room now. Pressers, player interviews. We're going to record the podcast here in the next hour probably, so hopefully he has some news by then, and we'll share it with you on the podcast. Try to get that podcast up and out tonight as soon as possible, and we'll let you know then. Brian, again, thank you for your contribution. I felt like I skipped over that too much. And thank you for listening to the podcast. Brian McGee, everybody give him a hand. Bucker or the snap. I'm not well-versed enough in kicker routines to know. I would guess a little bit of both. Yeah, the chat's flying. Cutie Bandit 14, I appreciate that. I think both the coaches today wanted to do what they wanted to do and didn't adjust enough or quickly enough. Okay, everybody, from this point forward, we'll do all questions. Everybody hit at least 2 question marks at the beginning of your question to let me try and pick those out. Stock Rider, should the Chiefs try and run on the Chargers or let pick them apart? I am all for running first. Beat them up. Wear him out a little bit. You saw Udon. You saw what's his name, 29. You saw them when they did run the ball on those couple of drives where the Chiefs meant to drive the ball. You saw them start to get breathing heavy. You saw them start to have some trouble. That's what running the ball does. I think they need to do more of that. And sometimes, and maybe against the Chargers is a good time because of how they play and that they have some good guys at safety position. What's his name? The rookie's really impressed me since I kind of wrote him off for the first game and he didn't do a whole lot. But yeah, running at them early, I think is a great plan. It's going to be a short week. We have a ton of stuff for you on the podcast, and I'll try to do at least one video. If I can't get a video done for game plan or for film room, because I won't get filmed till Tuesday evening, I'll definitely do another live and we'll do another session or 2. Hitchens did seem John Moser. Good point. Yeah, in the second half, especially, I think they kind of let him loose. And to me, he didn't necessarily just get faster in the second half. He didn't get an IV and feel better. Bob turned him loose and reduced his reads, reduced how much he has to think in this defense. And that's key. I think that's the big thing for the inside linebackers is slowing all of them down. Didn't see a whole lot of Dorian O'Daniel, and I know folks were asking about that early. I'm sorry I missed your questions. Didn't see a whole lot of Dorian O'Daniel. I thought we'd see a lot more, especially if they were going to play that nickel. Why not put him in? You're already saying that we're not going to worry about the run, which was a mistake. But I thought you saw Dorian be in there in particular late when they needed fresh legs and they needed somebody who could get out and keep an eye on Jackson. So maybe they didn't use him enough, but they're using him. They value what he does, so I don't think that's a problem. Todd Bowles for next season. The only problem with Todd Bowles for next season, and that's a good question, especially after what I said earlier, I just don't know if he's that big an upgrade in Andy's eyes. Andy will know. He only called defense for Philly for a year, as far as I understand. I'd have to go back and check all that. But, it's going to be what it is. Is Benjamin going to go this week? I think he might be active. I don't know if he's going to do much outside of a couple of plays in the red zone, because I think you can set those up for him in situationally and have him ready for that. I think Barry's going to be on a play count. I think Barry might get 20, 25 snaps is my guess. Was that Scott Smith? No, that was Diedrich. Bradley? No, shoot. Man, these guys are going so fast. Jason Austin. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Michael Adams. Do you think Jeff Allen? What do you think about Jeff Allen? I think Jeff's good in reserve. I think he's a little rusty, but I think Jeff's a solid backup to have, and he knows the offense, and I trust the guy. And I think the team trusts the guy. So that's gold. Do you think it's time to shut down Tyreek for the season? No, but I would say maybe this week. I don't know. You saw Dieter get a lot more snaps. I don't think he was targeted. I'll have to check the official numbers, but I thought Dieter can do some of those things. He's quicker than most think. But we'll have to see just how bad that ankle is. You might not see Tyreek this week. Do you think, Dan Thompson, do you think they'll re-sign Ford? I don't think so. I think they will franchise him though, because he's 28, 29 years old, 27. Shoot, I can't even remember. Alan Bailey's up there too. And I think one of them gets the franchise tag, probably Ford, because positionally it's just more important. But motivated D Ford in his contract year is worth it. Franchise tag is just an extension of the contract year, because you'll get a contract the next year. I'll get re-franchised or whatever. I don't think a long-term contract is a good thing for D Ford, but that's my opinion. The coaching staff may feel drastically different, so don't be surprised if it happens. I just don't know what to tell you. Talked about Benjamin. That was Shorty Love. Peyton, what do you think about the injuries? I think they're all middle of the road. I don't know anything super significant, but they all could miss time. The only one I'm worried about is Cam Irving. But again, you have Jeff, you have Reader you can put over there. I thought they might go with him when the injury initially happened, but they didn't. But I think Reader can play guard in a pinch, so that they have some options. Do you think they'll okay, answer Dan's question. Kelce's absence in the second half, more play calling or defensive scheme? I think it was defensive scheme, and the fact that Mahomes had guys in his face all second half. The pressure was there, and a lot of times, as quick as Travis Kelce is, a lot of teams try to jam him early, cover him early, and he has to work to get open. And his athleticism takes over, and that's how he gets loose later. But early in the down, when you got to get the ball out, I think it's harder for Travis against a team that's trying to shut him down. Why can't Scandrick catch? That's a good question. I don't have an answer for you. It's why he doesn't play offense. Okay, trying to hit all your questions here, folks. Just bear with me. Okay, I talked about Ragland O'Daniel. Okay. Do you hate Romo as a broadcaster? I don't. I like Romo. I like him a whole lot more as a broadcaster than I do as a player. He bugged me. Just seemed a little kind of schmirky, but man, I think he's hilarious as a play call. And I think he gives relevant insight. Unlike, who's the Cowboys guy that I should know, but he's out of my mind. Unlike Fouts, unlike the other ex-quarterbacks that are so out of it. It's the fact that he's so fresh from the league, so he understands current concepts and trends, but he's not afraid to elaborate. And I think that's the best part about what Tony Romo does on television. EB is essential. I mean, big test. You can't underestimate what Eric Berry can do for this defense. Can he make The linebackers better? Probably. Hopefully it will make Bob better at allowing the linebackers to do what they have to do and not be so worried about two-way goes and that kind of thing. Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think Dorian O'Danny should play more. That's something that I do believe. What was the next one? Aaron asked something. I'm not sure what it was. How good is a team that can lose Hunt and their season not be totally done? It's a testament to the other talent, and particularly the talent behind him that is pretty underrated because he's been so good. Important. Golden Patriot asked, important on Andy's play calling. It is important. I mean, it's as good as their highs are. Andy can pull you back a little bit. So it's just a balance. It's going to be what it is. Andy is not going anywhere. So we have to get used to that. Hey, there's a Raven fan or two in here. Hey, welcome. Thanks for listening. Got hurt. Won't play against the Chargers. Heard, huh? Okay. Hill did get hurt. I don't know if he's not going to play against the Chargers. I've been talking to you guys. Matt will have an update, and I'll have it on the podcast in a little bit. Yeah, the Ravens are a good team. I'm hoping they don't have to play them again in the playoffs, to tell you the truth. The Ravens are going to take a lot away from this. Actually, all the teams in the league are going to take a lot away from this, and you're going to see Pat have to deal with pressure. You're going to see the O-line have to deal with pressure a lot more because it clearly worked. So just be prepared for that. Ford's easily going to be a Pro Bowler. I think Houston deserves it, but I don't think he's going to get there. I mean, the Pro Bowl is still about fan voting, so you got to have the hype too. I think Chris Jones and D Ford will be Pro Bowlers. Did it look like they were scared to let Mahomes drop back when Baltimore put everyone on the line of the scrimmage? Andrew, yeah, they did, and that's good because bad things happen against an all-out package like that when you're trying to scramble around. So that's something significant. Question: Mr. Cole, how did we go so bad against the run knowing they were going to run? Because Bob's stubborn and he feels more comfortable in that 4-man front with 3 safeties. That's the only explanation. Didn't see Murray play a whole lot today. They clearly wanted the bigger safety in Sorensen out there. That's just the way Bob wanted it. He has his tendencies as well. So tag and trade, Yusura, that's a good question. I really don't think you're going to get the value for that on a franchise tag. I just don't. I could be wrong. It's happened in the past. I just don't think D Ford's going to command that kind of move. I could be wrong. Peyton Smith, how are you? Thanks for the contribution. I appreciate that. I'll answer yours right now. What do you think about Mahomes will ever throw to Dieter with all the beef? I think the beef's a great story. And unfortunately, I think Dieter was covered. Dieter was open a couple times when he didn't get the ball. And I think that's more about the pressure than it is about the beef. But it's a great story, and I like the way that Dieter acted it out for KCTV, Tom. Okay, more questions. Jonathan Palmer. Can Benjamin replace Harris in 2 tight end sets? I think that's a possibility. I want to see that because I think it's a matchup. You see a tall guy, and especially if he goes into a stance, although I don't know if he's ever gotten a 3-point stance. It's a good question. I think it throws the defense off a little bit, and his acceleration is clearly better than Harris's, and they don't shy away from Harris, so I don't know. I think we'll get some inklings here as they get going with him. Maybe not Thursday, but the week after. Healthy is the line against San Diego. It's going to be beat up. I'm not expecting Cam Irving back. Obviously, not LDT. Looks like everybody else came out all right. So we'll see how that comes down. What happened to Speaks? Didn't see him out there much today. No, he didn't get a whole lot. There was a couple where they totally subbed he and K-Pass together in for Houston and Ford. But I didn't see a whole lot. K-Pass got more play today, and I think it's because K-Pass is quicker off the ball. I don't think he's as stout against the run. I don't think he has as much power, and I think that's probably why they've been meandering towards Speaks. But now I think they went for speed, and I think K-Pass has the edge there a little bit. Bill, thank you. I missed your contribution here until now as I'm scrolling kind of slowly. So no insider questions, just thanks for creating refreshing content. Well, Bill, thank you, and thanks for the support. I have some new things coming for you guys. I'm getting new equipment. Ordered some new lights. We should get a better backdrop eventually, so you don't have to look at all my guitars and stuff. But all your contributions to the channel help. So I appreciate it and thank you. And I hope you see it as we go along that everything gets better. Going to do a ton of content. I'm not stopping when the offseason shows up. When the Chiefs, after the Super Bowl and the Chiefs are done, I'm moving right onto the draft. It's what I do every year. I'll cover the Senior Bowl. I'll do the whole 9 yards. So this channel will not slow down come off season. More questions. Bob, Alex Mitchell, I like your question. I'm not sure how to answer it, so I'm going to move on. You heard me talk about Bob. Bill Deshay, you want to shut Ty Hill down. Well, that's a valid point. I just don't think they will unless he's hurt. I don't think Hill will go for it unless he's hurt. So Andy is a player's coach, and he takes a lot of that kind of thing from the player. So I don't think he's going to do it against his will unless he's seriously hobbled. So we'll find out just how bad that injury is. Again, I think Barry will probably play on Thursday, so keep an eye out for that. Barry is a myth. He is legendary, so you can get down that path with me. I hear you. Aaron Todd, how many different receivers has Mahomes hit for touchdowns this year? I know it was 9, and I don't think anybody new caught one today, so I think it might still be 9, but Chris will have that. He follows all that stuff on the podcast. So, folks, if you don't know the podcast, it's Locked On Chiefs. It's on iTunes and Google Play and the whole 9 yards. My partners are Chris Clark and Seth Kaiser. Seth Kaiser used to be at Arrow Pride. He's at The Athletic now. Film guru. I mean, watches way more film than I do. I am a novice compared to him. So check those guys out and listen to the podcast. I think you'll really dig it. It's in most of the show notes, and I'll make sure to update it on this one as well. Do you think we need a defensive coordinator? Yep. How much control does Reed give Mahomes during the game? That's a very good question, Gerald. And I wish I had a better answer for you. I have a couple of inklings from media inside the locker room that I've talked to about some of those things, but nobody's really concrete on it. I think, especially when you're talking about killing plays and audibling to something else, I think that's probably not quite there yet. I think Andy gives him options and he goes from there. A lot of it is so much the ad lib afterwards, and that's his bread and butter. So I don't know that he has to like do it pre-snap. But let's see, more questions. That was that one. I hit that one. Matt Mitchell, how are you guys? Nice to see all the names that I always see in here. Thank you. Ryan Vogel, is the O-line okay? It's a little beat up, but they're going to get it done. I'm confident in that. Does Kelvin Benjamin seem the type of person the Chiefs want to employ? Mike Doyle, good question. He hasn't gotten along with any quarterback that he's played with in this league to this point. I did an emergency podcast last night. You can check that out. And I talked to Joe Marino. He's with the Draft Network, but he's also a lifelong, huge Bills fan. And he scouted Benjamin in college, and he watched him play in Buffalo. He had some good insight. And in terms of the type of person, neither of us know that because we don't know the guy personally. We'll see how he does here. A fresh start can maybe turn him around. We'll see. That was a good question. Any updates on LDT? Nothing new. He's out of the boot, continuing to walk around, but that's moving along. You can't really rush it. It was the multiple injury too. It was not just the leg, but it was the ankle as well. So you have to make sure that he's good on all fronts before he tries to practice. Once they activate him for practice, they have 3 weeks to get him onto the roster. So that's going to be your window. When he starts practicing that he's in the zone and maybe he'll come back. Pass rushers. Yes, you're absolutely right. Just looking, make sure I hit all of your questions. Anybody left that had a question, maybe you asked earlier that I missed, ask it again. I'm sorry to ask you to do that, but I will try to get to them all. DC, should we have used more quick passes on top of screens? I didn't like the screens because their DBs are aggressive too. And you saw that, especially with Robinson, I think got caught for a loss on one of the screens. I know Romo was talking that up. I don't like the screen game there. I much prefer going down field with slants. How much should be? Okay, good question. Michael Rodriguez, is Bosa back for the Chargers? Yes, I haven't seen what he's done today, but he's been back the last couple of weeks and is rounding into form from everything that I've seen. Yeah, those of you talking about macro beer, I know nothing about it. I either homebrew or drink craft stuff. So you want to talk about that, man? I got to get that other channel off the ground. There's too much beer talk that I'm missing out on. So Look for that. Maybe I'll do it in the offseason. Did I see the final moments of the Pats game? I didn't. I saw the replay on the touchdown that Miami scored. I have a good friend who's a big Miami fan, and I know he was losing his mind. Heck of a play there. What is in the glass? This is Ecliptic out of Oregon. This is their Imperial IPA. It's a brute. It's dry. It's about 9%. Not as strong as mine, but it's pretty good. Let's see. Questions. Usura, there you go. With Cam injury, EB returning, and O-line issues, do you wait and reactivate LDT no matter if Watts is ahead on returning? I don't think so. I think whoever's back and healthy first, I think you do it. Because there are more safeties than there are guards, and I think they like the safeties overall. I'm not saying they should. I think they're comfortable with Sorensen, even though I'm not. I think they're comfortable with Murray. I think they're comfortable with Ron Parker. I don't think they're going to prioritize it, is what I'm saying. Not saying I agree with that, but that's how I feel. Do teams target Hill? Yes, they double him as much as they can. They try to roll coverage, if not doubling, to try to disguise it. They try to run cover 4 to keep him contained. It just doesn't work. The guy's so ad-lib. And what you saw there on that big play in overtime when he actually ended up with Mosley covering him, that's a linebacker. They didn't do that on purpose. It was his own concept, and he wiggled out and got into somebody else's zone that was unable to stay with him. That's what it comes from. Archuleta, how are you? If Barry were to re-injure this week, is he done for good? I have no way to tell you that. It's all about the severity of it. If it ruptures, it could be. And I think that's probably why they're being more cautious, and he's being more cautious, and I'm good with that. Sorry, John Robertson. I drink pretty much anything. My favorite style, in case it matters, is barley wine. So don't hold the IPA thing against me. Have you had a nano? No, I have not had that. Thank you, Zach Weller. I will check that out. How many snaps do you hold EB2 on Thursday? Like I said earlier, I think it's like 20 or 25. I don't want to go over like the whole, let's use him as much as we can right away. I want to hold him back. Oh, and thanks, Brooke. I didn't realize Bats was on there. Folks, say hi to Bats, my buddy Danny, the Dolphins fan. There's a lot of folks in there. Hey, and we're still up over 440 minutes in. Thank you. Hill will be okay eventually. I didn't see anything that made me think it's like a season ender or anything like that. It may be something that holds him out a week or two. I don't know. Who's my player of the game? It's a tough one. You know, I mean, you could say Hill for coming back in. You could say Ware for toughing it out. You could say Mahomes for coming back after a bad interception, playing better down the stretch. But, you know, who's the guy who saved the game? It was Justin Houston. So I'll go with Justin Houston. And, you know, I'm sure Chris and Matt will argue with me later on the podcast. I saw something about Eric Bieniemy. Stuff is scrolling too quickly. Okay, Golden Pay Dirt. What would you say if Andy just gives Eric Bieniemy full play calling ability? Never going to happen. I'll just tell you that. It didn't happen with Doug. It didn't happen with Nagy. It's not going to happen with Eric. He will give them some control eventually. It's never going to be total. Andy's not going to stand there and not know what play is coming. Yeah, I agree with you on the running part. Is today's game the type of fight we can expect in the playoffs? Yes, it's a preview, Jeff Jenkins. That's exactly what I expect. People will use this as a blueprint of how to attack the Chiefs offense. Wes may be back next week. A916 kid. He may be back. I think it's, late into the fold. He was out, unsigned for a while. So maybe conditioning or something. I don't know. Do you think we need to pick it up on film watching? A lot of things that the Ravens did today, they hadn't done on film before. So I can't say that it's that. I think it's more about taking what you see on film, especially for Mahomes, and translating to what you see in front of you. And that is an experience thing. And I think that will come. I mean, obviously he's an experienced quarterback, but these NFL defenses are a step above what he saw in college, to say the least. Daniel Summers, do we have a stranglehold on first seed? Right now, yes. With the Patriots losing and the Texans losing, yes. The Chiefs have to seriously stumble. The last big hurdle is going to be the Chargers. I think they can deal with the Seahawks. I think the Chargers Thursday night is going to be the thing that sets whether this team gets the number 1 seed or not. Kenneth Busher, do you think anyone could challenge for the Patrick Mahomes for the MVP? At this point, I don't. Breeze didn't have a very good day again. I mean, he could always pick it back up. He's Drew Brees, but I think when you look back on it and take the season as a whole when it's over, I think Pat Mahomes is your MVP. He'd have my vote if I was one of the voters, and I'm 99% sure he has Terez's vote. So let's finish up these questions, and I'll let you all get out of here. I saw somebody else make a contribution, and I haven't scrolled to it yet. I will get to it, I promise you. What AFC things do you think make the playoffs? I think the Chargers make it. I think these Ravens may make it, to tell you the truth. So keep an eye out for that. That defense is good enough that if they continue to run the ball, they're going to make enough plays. It was Tom Bad 87. I'm sorry I'm so late on your contribution. I thank you for pitching into the channel. It will go for good use. And Tom's question was, is it possible that Kelvin Benjamin is around to replace Conley? Will KB be cheaper next year? Thank you. I'm glad you love the show. I don't know. I think it all depends on how he performs now. Right now, I don't think Benjamin has a whole lot of value. I think Conley will get a contract from somebody. I think if the Chiefs really value what he does, he is that kind of elder statesman in the room for the wide receivers. I think they could keep him. It just depends on the dollars. And I think if Benjamin goes on a tear and gets into the offense and can do something, he may have better value for somebody else willing to pay him. I think there's a possibility you could see both. I can't say he's the replacement because Kelvin Benjamin can't do what Chris Conley does. Chris Conley can play every single position. He can get yards after the catch. He can get separation, and that's not what Benjamin's shown me on film. Can he turn it around? I don't know. Was Kelce dropping OT just pressure or concentration? I have a feeling it was pressure, and the ball wasn't, perfectly on point, but, I could be wrong. Kelce made a number of great grabs, especially over his head today. So I don't think I'd put it on him. Tom, thank you for your contribution again. I'm sorry it took me so long to get back to your question. More questions. Jason Griffin, do you think if Hill was not playing injured in the 4th and 9, that would have been a TD? Yeah, I do. I actually do. He could have cut, and I think he could have made up that ground. Couple more, and then I will let you guys go. Not having some home run threat in the backfield hurting us. Skylar Tolson. Skylar, that's a good question. And I think it doesn't put the emphasis on the run like it did with Hunt, but I wouldn't say that it's hurting it yet because I think you're seeing those backs get enough done. Spencer Ware has gotten some nice runs, and I think they understand that Spencer's going to be physical and Damien's going to be kind of squiggly. But as that goes on, as they continue to put out, and I think especially once Darryl gets rolling, I think they're going to have to pay more attention to it. So, Mark Archuleta, thank you. I'm glad you guys like it. I appreciate you hanging out and spending time with me. I know it's a little bit weird. This whole thing's taken a lot to get used to for me, to tell you the truth. So, you sir, best hops to use for an imperial stout aged on bourbon chips in secondary fermentation. Well, if you're talking kettle hops, I'd probably lean towards something a little bit brighter. Maybe Centennial, maybe even a Calypso. I kind of like that one in stouts, to tell you the truth. If you're talking dry hop, I always would go with a more like earthy kind of hop for a dry hop. So I would even go Chinook in a dry hop for that. John Moser, are you in a band? Yes, I am the lead singer and songwriter for the Canyon Creek Band. We're out of Denver. I don't get many shows booked in Kansas City, but if you guys know some places that the band should play, you can find us at canyonCreekBand.com. And we even have a channel on YouTube with a couple of videos up there. More questions. Going to finish this up. With AFC teams, do you think... Oh, I answered that one. I must be skipping around here. This thing is jumping all crazy on me. Jason Austin, officially, it's a foot. I don't know what that means. It could be plantar fasciitis. It could be any number of things. So the Chiefs aren't really overly optimistic about explaining the specifics of a player injury. So just know it's his foot and go with that. What happened to my boy, Golden Paydirt? I was waiting for somebody to bring this up. I'm glad you got it in as we're almost done here. My boy Sherman dropped a pass. And I can't really I can't really defend him. You know, bad things happen sometimes. He hasn't gotten a touch in, I don't know, like 4 or 5 weeks. So I can't really blame him. You know, if you did what I said they should do and play the fullback every play of every game, then I don't think that would have happened. But that's just me. And the whole 11 fullback thing, I never actually said that. That's just Seth being Seth. But keep it in mind. I'd give it a shot. Because Chris Jones get the record, Craig Murphy? I think he might. Man, I'm excited to see it. So I hope so. And more about LDT. If you missed it, I talked about LDT in a little bit. I think he'll be back eventually. Nate Hill, I will try to do that. Yeah, I'll add the band stuff. The podcast and everything's in there every time, but I'll try to add the band stuff too. So at that point, I'll wrap it up. You guys have been great. We're at 50 minutes. This is the longest live we've ever done. So I'm not in Denver. I'm in Colorado. I'm up in the mountains. So that's why it looks like that. So anyway, thank you for all your time. Thank you everybody who contributed today and has spent time with me. And I really appreciate it. I will have at least a video this week. And if anything goes wrong with the timing of the game film, then I'll just do more lives. I'll have post-game live on Thursday night. These lives are going to take over on short weeks because it's just too much work to trying to get done. So thank you all for your support. Thanks for the question. It's great. And thank you all for being here yet again. Have a great week. Check out the podcast. There'll be more information when I get it on there. It's a little easier to put it out there. And if I don't see you before, I will see you Thursday night. Y'all have a good one.